Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call tonight's regular meeting of council to order. Recommendation that the agenda for the regular council meeting of May 8th, 2017 be adopted as presented with additional agenda items 6D, Northwest Regional Workforce Attraction Initiative, and 7A, Special Events Society Grant Support. Moved by Councillor Kinney, second by Councillor Niche. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Item 3A, the recommendation that the minutes of the special regular council meeting of April 20th, 2017 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Ranhawa, seconded by Councillor Niche. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Item 3B, recommendation that the minutes of the special council meeting of April 24th, 2017 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, seconded by Councillor Kinney. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. 3C, recommendation that the minutes of the regular council meeting of April 24th, 2017 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Niche, second by Councillor Morrow. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. And item D, recommendation that the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting of April 24th, 2007 be adopted with an amendment that the time for the meeting be changed from 5:01 to 7:01. There's just a bit of a typo on that one, that's all. So it's just a bit of amendment. Yep. Okay, moved by Councillor Ranhawa, seconded by Councillor Niche. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, first we have a report from our Chief Financial Officer regarding the 2016 audited financial statements.
Our auditor from Carlisle Shepherd and Company is here to actually speak to the financial statements. Steve Keitzman, we can invite you up.
Great, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillor, for the opportunity to come and present to you the 2016 financial statements for the City of Prince Rupert. What do we do as independent auditors? I think many people don't know what we actually come in and do. We split up an audit into two parts. We come in before the year end, in November this year, and we first of all identify the major control areas, payroll, cash controls around all of the cycles, and we test those in depth. We also look at the taxation, and we do a pretty detailed review, especially focusing on new areas and systems changes around those areas. So that's the first part of our audit. And then we come in after the year end's been completed, and we review the financial statements that I'm hoping you all received a copy of, that have been prepared by management. We test the transactions and the amounts supporting the balance sheet of the city. And the final output of all of that is a audit report on which we express an opinion as to whether or not the financial statements are materially correct. We have completed all of that work, and we believe that the financial statements are materially correct, so we will, after Council has approved and adopted the financial statements, be expressing an unqualified audit opinion. There's a lot going on in the City of Prince Rupert's financial statements. I know you've got issues with Watson Island and landfills, as a lot of regional districts and cities do. So those are areas that we pay particular attention to during our audit process. I think it's probably worth noting that we've had some pretty in-depth discussions with management about those key issues, obtained an understanding of exactly where the city's at before coming to the point where we feel we are able to express an unqualified set of opinion on the financial statements. you guys are very fortunate to have a fantastic financial team downstairs who are always open and frank with us. They don't only wait for us to come in at the end of the year and update us on what's been happening in the city. They keep us appraised throughout the year on any issues that arise. And Corinne and her team have been nothing but helpful in assisting us in order to complete our job. So thanks very much for that. If anybody has any specific questions on what I've just said, I am happy to address those. Otherwise, yeah, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to come in.
Thank you. Any questions from council?
Yeah.
Thank you for your report. So you check from all statements, everything, everything you feel comfortable?
Yes, sir. We check all of the transactions in the underlying accounting. We don't check every single transaction. We obviously we sample. We test a sample of transactions, but we ensure that what's been presented to you in the financial statements is an accurate reflection, representation of what's coming out of the accounting system downstairs throughout all areas. And for instance, up at the rec center, there was a change in the accounting package used. It used to be Max, and now it's Intel. So what we did this year is we went up there and we paid particular attention to when that program was first introduced, spoke to people about teething troubles, ensured that those had been worked through, and that the information from Intel was flowing correctly into the accounting system. So we tend to identify first potential risk areas and focus more of our testing on those risk areas.
Other questions?
I just wondering, when I usually see an audit, I usually see the, and I imagine this is the independent auditor's report on page 16. I usually see something signed that. Is this your report? Sorry.
The reason that report is in draft is the earliest we as auditors can date our audit report is the day on which those charged with governance have approved the financial statement. So we are not able to, under the Canadian accounting standards, actually date our audit report before those charged with governance, which is council, have approved the financial statements.
So what company are you with?
I work for Carlisle Shepherd and Company, and we've been in business in the Northwest for over 40 years. Clearly, I haven't been there for 40 years, but we are we have a particular speciality in auditing regional districts, cities, and municipal organizations. Currently, we are responsible for the audit of the Skeena Queen Charlotte Regional District, District of Kitimat, District of Stewart, and the City of Terrace.
Yeah, I didn't think that we changed our auditors, and I know that our past auditors have been Carlisle and Shepherd, but I couldn't see anything in here that identified you as the auditing company, so that's why I was wondering.
My apologies. I should have made that a little clearer when I first started. Apologies.
Any other questions?
So if I wanted to get down in specifics, it would be better to talk to Corinne about it than you.
Yes. Sorry. Yes, it would. I have a fairly good understanding of most items on the statement of financial position, which is a balance sheet. But the specifics, Corinne would be in a better position to explain the mechanics. Yeah.
Any other questions? Councillor Moreau?
Thanks very much for your presentation. I did actually just have one question on the statement of financial position, and it is more of a technical one, so I'm not sure if it's better asked of staff. Everything reads, I mean, kind of as you would expect it to, from 2015 to 2016. But the one thing I had a question about, maybe it was just a change in accounting procedure process, but there was about a $3.5 million swing between the unappropriated and appropriated operating surplus. And I'm just wondering if I can get a bit of an explanation as to why that is. So it's right near the bottom there under city position, statement C.
Thank you. So, Councillor Moreau, in respect of that. So, in mostly what it is that some of the unappropriated surplus, right, moved from, sorry, I have to go back and reference again. So each is separated out into separate funds, right? And included in the statement C is Prince Rupert Legacy. And from last year to this year, what has happened is that because of the budget, we know that there's going to be a portion of the surplus that will be spent in 2017, which we call appropriated surplus. So because that has actually occurred, what we've done is taken a portion of the unappropriated surplus and allocated it towards what we call appropriated surplus going forward. So that is principally what it is a reflection of for all of the funds combined. And that's how it's reported on Statement A. It's an amalgamation of all of them, but Statement C does identify each of the different funds as they've been appropriated by Council in the budget process.
Councillor Cunningham, then Councillor.
Okay, in liabilities, accounts payable and accrued liabilities, increase of $1.5 million primary due to contractor work, and then you go to 6A where it explains it. Now, I see 1.3 approximately trade payables. Can we get a breakdown on that?
Sorry, I thought I hit the button. Yes, I can provide a breakdown, but in general, most of the holdbacks are in relation to some of the contracts that we have outstanding at December 31st. So, for example, engineers come in after a project is done, and they sign final approval to pay out what's generally a 10% holdback, and that is normal in most of these large-scale projects that are undertaken. But that is still considered a liability from the perspective of financial statements because we are undertaking the work, and until the engineer actually goes ahead and signs his professional designation and signature to those things, that's the period of substantive performance and completion, so it releases all of the responsibilities of the contractor. So those things are still payable from the perspective of the city, and we still are waiting for the final trigger to actually be able to make payment.
I'm just looking at the increase due to contractor work. Now, is that above and beyond our normal work, or is that contract work that's being done by contractors instead of the city because we've cut our workforce?
No, that is incorrect. It's all in relation to the larger scale projects that our city staff do not undertake.
Councillor Thorkelson.
I just wanted to point out to page 13 of 25 in the audit, or in my package it's page 30. and it shows loans. Notes the consolidated financial statements, and under item 5 it says loan to Prince Rupert Airport Authority. I was just noting your letter to the editor that explained why council was interested in exerting more control over the airport and what's going on at the airport. And I just thought that it would be interesting to point out that the total loans that the city is underwriting, or not underwriting, but is holding for the Prince Rupert Airport is $7.7 million. So I just want to point out to anybody who wonders why we want to have some more or greater control over the airport authority is because it's the city's neck that is out there. We're the ones that are having to pay the loans. The taxpayer that's having to pay the loan. It's not the Prince Rupert Airport Board that they're responsible as we put it through them, but we are responsible for the loan. So I just thought that was worth pointing out that we went through, if anybody remembers, we lent $6,500,000 through a counter petition, right? We did that through a counter petition, and then we owe, and then we took an extra $1.2 million from Legacy. So that's and forwarded that to. Prince Rupert Legacy forwarded that to the airport authority as well via the city council. So I just wanted to point that out because some people were asking me a little bit more specifically what skin the city had in the sandwich, and that's a lot of money. That's probably our biggest. I think we look at it as our biggest loan, isn't it?
And if I can comment to that point too, we as auditors, we look at this balance that's sitting as a receivable on the financial statement, and we've noted that the city has taken the necessary steps in order to protect their interest by having mortgages placed on Prince Rupert's the Prince Rupert Airport Authority's property. So I've taken the necessary steps to securitize those loans.
Other questions? Well, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate that.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so recommendation that Council by resolution accept the 2016 audited financial statements. Moved by Councillor Kinney, seconded by Councillor Cunningham. I'll just quickly add, so this is this time in the process where if there was ever anything at all at odds with the city's business or the city's function, the audit usually would come up with that some sort of red flag for us. And so I'm happy to see that once again, city looking in good shape. We have a great team downstairs. I know you guys work really hard, so thank you very much to Ms. Bauman and her team, and to the rest of the staff as well. And we do our best to manage the entire financial affairs of this community, and I believe we're doing an exemplary job. So thank you for coming and presenting. And all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, moving on to report from our community planner regarding application for development variance permit 405 5th Avenue East. Welcome back.
This is a request for a development variance permit for the property located at 405 5th Avenue East for the purpose of renovating a single-family residence that currently exists in nonconformance to setback standards of the Prince Rupert zoning bylaw. The application is to vary section 5.2.4 to decrease side yard setbacks from 1.2 meters to 0.46 meters to the west property boundary and 0.34 meters to the east property boundary. The proposed renovation of raising the residence would result in a further contravention of the setbacks. Therefore, a development variance permit is required for this proposed renovation to proceed, and this is given by the Local Government Act. The residence is located in a well-established neighborhood. The siting of this residence has existed since the house was built. Our records indicate approximately 1920. Therefore, this request is not deemed to adversely impact neighboring residences, and this is based on that this is a pre-existing siting scenario, and the renovation will not be exceeding the maximum allowable building height. Staff issued notification of the proposed variance to the neighboring properties within a 50-meter radius. As of today's date, which is the end of the required 10-day notification period, staff did not receive any inquiries or comments. As such, we have not received any objections that would prevent approval of this application for variance. Therefore, this application requests to proceed to final consideration. Do you have any questions?
Any questions from council? Okay, recommendation that the development variance permit application number DP 1704 for 405 Fifth Avenue East proceed to final consideration. Moved by Councillor Randhawa, second by Councillor Moreau. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you very much for your time. Okay, next we have a report from our Manager of Community Development, the 2007 update to the City of Prince Rupert Community Energy and Emissions Plan. Welcome back, Mr. Seideman.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Okay, so as the Mayor pointed out, and as you saw in your report to Council, staff have prepared an update to the City's Community Energy and Emissions Plan. The update to the plan presents a 5-year phased approach to attempting to meet the City's stated greenhouse gas reduction goals as provided for in the official community plan. So some background for Council. The city's existing community energy plan was formed in 2008 as a response to the province's introduction of Bill 27, which introduced greenhouse gas and climate change targets for the province as a whole, and mandated that cities develop plans for the municipalities that were in line with those targets. The 2008 plan set targets for greenhouse gas reductions here in Prince Rupert, a 5% reduction by 2012, a 15% reduction by 2016, and a 33% reduction by 2020. And those targets were incorporated into the OCP in 2010. The 2008 plan recommended a number of actions for the city, and anticipated a significant amount of provincial support. When the plan was developed, it was just following the introduction of Bill 27. There was a lot of momentum. That was around the time that the province introduced its carbon tax, and so there was some anticipation that there'd be some significant movement and improvement on climate initiatives going forward. Since 2008, obviously, a number of things have changed, and so staff considered it was time to take a look at renewing the plan. This is especially in light due to the city's performance against the established targets under the current plan. So as you can see from this, community emissions rose for the period of 2007 to 2010. And this was largely due to industrial development, primarily with the construction of the container port. Port marine traffic actually is not included in the city's community energy and emissions inventory, since they're marine emissions, but any construction activity that results in increased heavy equipment traffic and things like that, any land-based emission source is likely to be included, and so that's why you see that relatively significant uptick likely there. Since that time, there's been some relatively steady improvement, although again not as significant as hoped for or as set as the standard in the OCP. There's a number of reasons for that. Third-party support, as I mentioned, not as significant as expected. A number of significant BC Hydro incentives were eliminated several years ago. We're not eligible for a number of the large incentives offered by FortisBC because we're in Pacific Northern Gas territory, and they're not required to provide the same level of incentives that the large natural gas providers are required to do. We also don't have access to NRCan energy advisors. So for Council's information, the province and the federal government coordinate on home energy efficiency and municipal efficiency initiatives through an NRCan program of trained energy advisors. There's supposed to be energy advisors in virtually all communities across Canada. Unfortunately, the only regional NRCan advisor was located in Terrace and has since vacated that community, and so the nearest energy advisor is in Prince George. So getting assessments of municipal buildings or residences is difficult, if not impossible, at the time. And as Council, I'm sure, is aware, there's been a number of financial constraints over the years that have, reduced the city's capacity to address some of the actions outlined in the original plan. So why update the plan? As I mentioned, staff had noticed that the existing plan wasn't delivering on the results set out in the OCP. One of the major reasons to update the plan is that in 2008, when these plans were all put together across the province, there was no real experience at the municipal level about how any of these initiatives would work. And so now, 10 years on from the introduction of the original plan, we have a whole province of communities that have tried different aspects of plans. There's been a bit of a laboratory of democracy out in the province, and so we can benefit from 10 years of experience in other communities to see what's worked, what hasn't worked in other communities, and benefit from all of that experience. As well, having a current plan that reflects today's priorities is important for staff as we look at our various departments and look for opportunities to again meet the targets set out in the OCP. It's important to have some direction as to which opportunities we should focus most on. And from another perspective, any improvement in the energy efficiency of the community retains money in the community. So we project that the city currently, not the city as an organization, but the residents and businesses of the city spend $47 million a year in energy costs. That's transportation fuels, home heating, electricity. If we were to adopt this current plan and fulfill it to its fullest extent, within 5 years, we would see $5 million of that $47 million expenditure not spent on energy, and those energy costs almost completely are costs that are leaving the city. There's not local energy providers that are keeping those revenues and reinvesting them. So any dollar saved is a dollar kept in the community. One of the incentives that BC Hydro does offer, and we're very grateful for it, is that they do provide free funding for communities to either create or update their community plans. And so we were approached by the Community Energy Association and told that this was an opportunity available to us, and so we took them up on the offer. And the Community Energy Association has trained facilitators and experts on community energy use. And this is what they do. They've produced nearly 50 community energy plans across the province and are really the experts when it comes to community energy emissions plans. They, along with city staff, reviewed the community's emissions over the past 10 years or so. And in a 2-day workshop, a full day with a large staff team and then another day of kind of tweaks, produced the bulk of the plan. And this was attended by the mayor, city staff, members of the Port, Metlakatla Development Corporation, Transition, the Northwest Community College, and some other representatives from the community. And we looked at over 100 actions that are currently in place in other communities across the province to find the best fit for Prince Rupert. In your council packages, you have obviously the full plan and the details of that. I've produced here just a quick at-a-glance look at the 5-year action plan. So these range from very straightforward, simple actions like promoting existing efficiency programs, which we can do relatively free, even just through the city website. And the focus on most of these activities, even the more significant ones, is to do what we can right now with the capacity and the funding that we have right now, and without having to ask more of the taxpayers. And anything that has an expense is pushed into a slightly later year so that we can look for grant opportunities and hope that the city's financial situation improves to the point where it can support those activities. So, as I mentioned earlier, this is really about setting priorities for staff so that we can go out and try and find ways to accomplish these goals. These are the actions that we kind of identified as the most likely that we can engage in. We've also identified a list of additional opportunities that are not currently conceived to take place under the plan. But again, if opportunities arise for us to capitalize on these are other opportunities that we've identified could make a significant difference in the community's energy profile and are things that we'd like to take on if the opportunity presents itself. So to connect the update to the original plan, there are 5 actions in the 2008 plan that are either partially or totally completed, including obviously the introduction of targets and incorporation to the OCP all the way up to reviewing municipal buildings for energy opportunities. As I'm sure Council's aware, the REC department has come forward to Council for grant applications for energy efficient roofs and things like that. That's all actions that have been taken already under the 2008 plan. There are 5 actions that are carried forward directly into the 2017 plan in one way, shape, or form, which include promotion, as I mentioned, of existing energy efficiency programs, opportunities to use hybrid vehicles, and improvement of transit amenities, especially opportunities for active and alternative forms of transportation. 3 actions are included from the 2008 plan as opportunities, so not currently conceived. And these are included largely as opportunities, largely because they are some of the more expensive options. So setting up local energy, renewable energy opportunities and things like that. And 6 actions are not included either because they were infeasible or too expensive or were unlikely to deliver significant results. Some of which are already also, the Green Dialogue series in many ways is encompassed kind of by the Hayes 2.0 and the redesigned Rupert initiatives as well. So, in terms of outcomes, as you can see here, there's the historical energy profile against targets beginning in 2017. You can see that if there's really no significant change to the plan, we're likely to continue on a steady trajectory at our existing emissions level with maybe slight increases in the ongoing future. If we were to implement the plan that's proposed, it's hoped that we could potentially achieve as much as a 12.5% reduction in our energy emissions over the next 5 years. It would still be short of the community's target as specified in the OCP, but it would move us about a third of the way there, which is a significant improvement over the current kind of business as usual progress that the city's made. And that's it. You have all of the details, obviously, in the plan. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Seidemann. Any questions from Council? Councillor Thorkelson.
Yeah, the last Green Plan was developed by a council-appointed committee, and of which there were 2 councillors and some city staff on there. And I think that you've given a pretty good assessment of the things that have been done and the things that haven't been done. One of the things is that we, and maybe you could bring me up on this, Mr. Seidemann, but there were 3 things that I didn't see here. One was that the city the city could not force anybody to do anything other than within its present authority, which is prescribed by legislation. So what we had to do was lead by example, or do a few economic development things that we could do, or we could change our, at the time that we made the presentation, nobody was interested. There was no economic development that went on in 2008. There wasn't much in the way of economic development in 2007 and 2008 when this was being built. So at that time we looked at, there's many other municipalities like Whistler and Bowen Island with a high growth rate. We're actually putting things into their development bylaws. So they were saying you have to meet these certain standards, and if you don't, you'll get so many points according to it, and we'll award a development between a couple of competing groups that want one piece of property, and they would look at awarding that according to a point system on how many green things that they were meeting. And I brought that package with me today because I thought it might be something that, again, it's not a cost to the present Prince Rupert, but it certainly would be a cost if people wanted to start having bidding wars over which property we were going to if we're going to change zoning or if we're going to sell city property. So I brought them with me because I think that they are important. The other thing is the municipality actually said by 2012 that we were going to have a 10% reduction in our municipal energy. That was what we agreed as a corporate entity. And the 5% reduction in emissions by 2012, the 15% by 2016, and the 33% reduction by 2020 was the community greenhouse gas reduction. We were supposed to reduce the municipal ones by 10% by 2012. So the municipal, most of the municipal, the recreation complex was where we lost. Where we created most of was the largest part of our energy consumption, and the swimming pool in itself was the largest emitter of greenhouse gases. And so looking at the swimming pool when we deal with that with things is one of the things that we were looking at the time, of course, was pie in the sky. And but if we're ever looking at changing the skating rink or the swimming pool, the energy systems there is to put some kind of linkage between the two buildings. That's what they've done in Burns Lake or Smithers. They've linked their swimming pool, and quite a few, probably in 2005 or 4 now, they linked their swimming pool and their skating rink. Because the skating rink needs a cooling system, they use the hot air from the cooling system into the swimming pool to heat the swimming water, and then the cold system goes back. So it's an air pump between the two buildings. So there was a number of things that we needed to look at. One was reducing our fleet, trying to get our car size down, so we stopped buying large vehicles and started trying to buy, smaller. The staff can run around the car just as well as they can in a pickup. So I was actually quite surprised that our greenhouse gas emissions had increased. What we are supposed to have, according to our greenhouse energy plan, was we were supposed to have an accounting once a year come to City Council to tell how we had done it. And the provincial government was supposed to have set up in 2009 maybe a system on how that was to be done. And it was quite complex, and they had webinars on it, and I don't know if our staff ever got taught how the province wanted it done. And I imagine that they've probably changed how they wanted it done about 4 times, knowing the provincial government since that time. But we should, if they're still asking for that system, we should actually have an accounting every year about how greenhouse gas emissions are, so that we don't come up and say, oh, they've gone up in this length of time. And if they've gone up, where have they gone up? We should be aware of this. Is it our buildings that have gone up? Likely not. Likely we've put a new roof on the swimming pool to try to conserve the amount of gas we use. Hopefully the amount of gas we're using at the swimming pool is declining, and so therefore our greenhouse gas emissions as a corporate entity are going down. So what else is driving it? Is it the construction, because we're now burning more fuel by trucks being driven through town from here to quick load? If the quick load facilities in town is that going to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions as a city? And as we grow, it's more difficult to ratchet our greenhouse gas back. So I think this is a good plan. I've got lots of things to talk to you about. I think that certainly the biggest bang for the buck in a community that we talked about was trying to get people who were living in older stock houses to do things like add more insulation or put better siding on, put better windows on, right? That's what we were looking at doing. And even put in different lighting and have low flush toilets. And I always wondered what low flush toilets have to do with energy, but I guess that has to do with our city pumping system, pumping the water in and the sewage through, so that would reduce whatever the city water runs downhill. I know that's all you need to know if you're a plumber, but I think there's a few more things involved. And So I'm really anxious and excited to try to look at doing things. Some things that we had identified and we did do in the consequent green funding was we had a bike route. There's actually an official bike route done for the city of Prince Rupert, but it's done nothing more than on paper because we didn't have the money at the time to paint little bikers on the bike route and create a bike lane because it was going to be too expensive to put paint down there. But there is a route that was that the Green Committee 2 did. There was discussion about an idling bylaw so that whether you want to have a drive-through like McDonald's where people idle all the way through, or whether you want to say all other entities that come to town, there's no more drive-throughs, you don't have bank drive-throughs, and you don't have fast food drive-throughs. And the other thing that I didn't notice in here, although I can't say that I might have missed it, was that one of the things you could get credit for was trees and planting young trees, because young trees are more carbon sinks than older trees. And in that our parks, many of our parks, particularly our lineal parks, every time a big storm comes through, there's trees that blow down in there, and we also need to go in if we're going to be using those parks and taking down danger trees, in which case there's free trees you can get, and we could actually see if we could get some planting done, make it a community planting day or something where we start growing young trees. So there's a whole bunch of things that I think that we could add to this plan, but I think it's a really good start. One of the other things that had to do with trying to deal with houses was we thought we would try to work with a college. They had a building maintenance program that they were teaching, but to see if we could get some of those people in that program to do a stint, and apparently BC Hydro kicked in some money from some communities to do this. And again, that's a long time ago, in 2008, but they went door to door, and what they did is they would go to somebody's house if they were requested, and they would go and change light fixtures to LED style lighting. In those days, maybe it wasn't LED, it was just different kind of fluorescent lighting, to have a look and see what kind of bath fixtures they have. So there was a package of things that these people would do which would help to make your toilet low flow, even if it wasn't a low flow toilet, and fix your lights, and I don't know, see if you needed more door caulking. That was one of the things. It was a bunch of things that you could run with a concurrent to a building maintenance program, and we thought maybe the college would like to get engaged in that. So the only trouble something like this takes, it takes a lot of energy, and that we didn't have any staff to get involved in that. We didn't even have any staff that could take the time to actually get involved in the accounting program for ourselves, to know how much our own greenhouse gas emissions were over the years. And so I agree with your analysis that you have to say we can do some things now and some things in the future, but I would like to sort of also see maybe a schedule drawn up of what the councillors can look at for some passing of bylaws, if we think that we want them or not. But if we want to have a bike route, and if we have enough money to put that in the budget in the future, we should look at a few of those things as well.
Councillor Mark.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks very much for your report. I wanted to cycle back to one of Councillor Thorkelson's original points about what we can best do on a corporate level. Would most likely be some kind of district energy system with this Civic Center and Lester Center and all that other stuff, which obviously takes quite a bit of capital. So my question is just, you referenced it here in your report, was that the federal government has new funding streams for climate change programs, which requires an update to our emissions plan. So I was just wondering if you can talk a little bit more in depth about what those programs are going to look like and kind of what the timeframes are. And kind of what you expect or what you would recommend our priorities being as a council in spending our political capital to try to get some of these grants moving forward.
Yes, you're correct. Yes, the federal government is launching a new set of funding initiatives through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. There's There's a scheduled rollout of programs. There's a kind of a spring introduction of funding programs, a summer and a fall program. Most of the most significant, especially the capital funding opportunities, are coming in the fall and are still under development. I've been attending webinars around the introduction of these programs to start to understand how they'll work. It's difficult to say right now which would be the best priorities. The capital programs, depending on the cost, for lower cost capital programs, they do provide some actual grant funding, which is a bit of a shift and a good shift in my view, away from loans, which oftentimes the city can't access because we just simply don't have the financial means, but more to a grants-based approach for actual capital programs. So as Councillor Thorkison pointed out, district energy systems and especially those that use renewable resources for heating or for energy are a priority, and they're identified in the plan as an opportunity. So it dovetails very nicely with what you're saying. So for instance, one of the opportunities, if I just jump back here, that you can see is the district energy, renewable energy systems, and that's conceived of as early as 2018 if the opportunity presents itself. So we actually, the city, I think as a result of the 2008 plan, commissioned a feasibility study for a district energy system at the rec center to take waste heat and recycle it from the ice rink into the pool, and then also to use some biomass heating for those two facilities. It was not deemed to be cost effective at the time, although the financials have changed somewhat since then. So if funding becomes available, in fact, one of the fellows from the Community Energy Association who helped us produce this plan was the man who produced that feasibility study. So he's very familiar and very eager to provide us with an update on that plan if we have the financial wherewithal to approach that. So certainly that's another opportunity. And the nice thing about this plan is it does provide us with some guidance as to which initiatives are kind of most prioritized for funding applications.
Councillor
Going a little more on what you were just saying about funding and that, now that we're upgrading our water system, have we looked at putting in a generator at the dam, or like Fort St. John has an inline generator in their actual water line that generates electricity, takes care of all their pumping and that, and then they have enough left over to sell to the grid. And, can we look at things like that for funding? And one other quick question, Mr. Siderman, and then I'll leave you alone, is an incinerator for our dump more efficient than landfill as far as emissions go? Because I know over in Europe, where they seem to be really concerned about pollution and that, more and more of the bigger centers are going to incineration, probably for lack of land, but also, and from that they generate electricity also, which as a city we could probably get some income from. But I'm just wondering if any of these grants and that coming forth would help us in any of those. I see in one of your graphs you've got something sort of there for the future, but now that we're working on the water system right now, it'd be interesting between engineering and yourself if we could come up with some plan for a future, even if we have to add it later, but at least have it planned so that we can do it in the future at a little less cost than it would cost.
Thank you. Yes, in response to your first question, generating power from the water supply is challenging in that the water supply is currently located within a conservancy, a BC Parks Conservancy, and provincial law under the Parks Act prohibits the generation of hydroelectric power within a conservancy. So the city is unable to use that resource for hydro generation at this time. With regards to landfill gases, one of the kind of striking outcomes of this process was to note that one of the most significant opportunities we have to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions is through diversion of organic material away from the landfill. So, Councillor Cunningham, you correctly point out that landfills are a significant source of greenhouse gases, especially methane, which is a much more significant greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. And so allowing the landfill just to sit there and decompose and expel methane into the atmosphere is definitely a significant contributor to the city's greenhouse gas emissions. Landfill gas capture and landfill or solid waste to energy systems have the potential to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but they are relatively expensive capital programs. And so again, organics diversion is kind of conceived of in the same breath in many ways as landfill gas capture and those kinds of initiatives. And it's identified in this plan as an additional opportunity, I believe. Sorry, no, I take that back. It's included in year 5 of the 5-year plan as something to investigate opportunities to reduce our emissions from landfill, and certainly those would be activities that could be considered encompassed in that.
So so if we can't generate power from the dam because it's in that area, how about an inline turbine in the actual pipe itself outside of that area? Because once it's gravity fed and pumped out, and it could generate electricity through an inline turbine, and that's what Fort St. John does. They actually pump it up from the river, and then it's gravity fed to the city, and their inline turbine is where it's gravity fed. Is that a possibility in the future?
I would say that the Park Act being what it is and the regulations being what they are currently, it's unlikely that there would be a way within kind of the provincial legislation that we could draw the water from within the Conservancy and use it at any point anywhere for power generation at this point.
Councillor Kenny?
Thank you. Have they looked any further into the wind farms?
Yes, there's a private company that has secured an investigative license for Mount Hayes and for Mount Oldfield. The Seabreeze Wind Power. They are currently going through a Ministry of Forest, Lands and Natural Resources working group process to develop that project. I believe, if I recall correctly, that they are completing their development permit plan application, I should say, and that should be presented to. I believe it's already been presented to FLNRO and should be being dispersed out into the working group in the next month or so. So we should see some update on that process, and that is, as I recall, a plan for 2 separate wind farm installations, both of which would be 15 megawatts or so. One kind of 5 turbines on Mount Oldfield, and the other 5 turbines on Mount Hayes. And the city is participating in those working group discussions.
Thank you.
Councillor Renha?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for your report. Like you mentioned, BC Hydro, they cut many incentives. Like we used to have, if you change your fridge, new fridge, they used to send $30 and take your old fridge. So new fridge take only half energy. And if you change windows, you get some incentive or furnace. So I'm wondering, like, if the city should write down a letter to BC Hydro to think about restart those programs, because they can save lots of energy too.
Something to look into. Yeah. Any further discussion? Okay, so the recommendation is that Mayor and Council approve the attached update to the city's community energy emission plan. Moved by Councillor Moreau, second by Councillor Renha. Not to belabor any extra points, but I'll just add a quick update about the 2030 Sustainable City Initiative as one of our pillars of the Hayes 2.0 plan. So last year the council approved us Mayor's Select Standing Committee. So I struck a small group, myself, Ken Shaw from the from the college, and Samantha Wagner from Kitkatla Environmental, and we've come together and essentially have created a kind of mini policy book like we did with the Planning for Major Projects initiative. We did it opposite as the Green Task Force plan that happened previously, which had a massive public engagement process. There was lots of ideas. We decided to do it differently this time by coming up with a draft of a policies first that I'm going to then bring to council here shortly for a workshop environment. So it'll be a day-long workshop where we can go through it. The policies are on renewable energy in the community. It all integrates into the SEEP as well, so it's all part of one bigger master plan. And it talks about transportation and local food production and a variety of things like that, so that we can have a more thorough discussion as a council around these things, because there's obviously, Councillor Thorkelson, tons to discuss with this stuff and prioritizing and things. And so that's going to come soon as a draft, and then what I'd like to do from there as a process piece is bring it forward to council at a meeting to be adopted as a draft, then to be brought to a public engagement process. So from there, I'd like us to go into the community and have table discussions around local energy, around local food, around local transportation, local economics over the next year with the community, so that everybody gets to have kind of their, they get to basically co-create this document with us. And then, mapping out the, what's doable, what's a dream, those types of things, what's, within financial. That's why it's called 2030 Sustainable City, not immediate. And that way the whole community can get a part of this and get engaged with these discussions around the SEEP and things like that, because I think we need to create a mechanism for that. And then once we do public engagement, then bring the policy book back to council as a final adoption at a later time. So I just wanted to update everybody on that now that Mr. Simons brought this forward. It's all kind of working together. The SIA, the Community Energy Association, we're a member of that now, the City of Prince Rupert, and as a part of that, I was able to get onto the BC Municipal Climate Leadership Council. So I'm actually part of a group that we discuss quarterly from cities like North Vancouver and in Surrey and Richmond and Smithers, and we all discuss a broader range of policy around BC. And so I'll be actually heading down to Vancouver in the middle of May 17th to the Renewable Cities Conference as part of my role on this group. And there's going to be about 30 workshops for us municipal leaders and staff and things like that to basically help co-create some of this stuff, as well as see what other communities are doing, because a lot of these policies are based on the successes of other communities. So I just wanted everyone to know that that's all coming out pretty soon. It's all part of this. And just to give everyone an update since we're talking about it, and not to keep us here any later than we already are, but just thought I'd let you know. So stay tuned for a workshop from that, and then the public can stay tuned to see a draft of that, probably, I would say, the early of June, hopefully. Councillor Thorkelson.
I just have one request, and that is that, if we do have staff that are now interested in keeping track of where we are, that we should get a report once a year on where our greenhouse gases. And I like this, which I don't think was in the report. I think you ran it together, and it'd be nice to have those two slides that you showed separate. So one of the we're going to do is, and there's a slide before this one, which, that one. So there are actions, and then there are nice things to do. If we get those two slides as well printed, that would be an addition that I would like to see. That chart's a little hard to read, and these two are much easier. But also, I think that we should have a report. I've wondered often I've wondered how we've been doing, and I know as soon as you get growth, then our community greenhouse gases increase. But whether municipal ones, which are the ones that we can control, are decreasing or not, we should know.
Is that something that's doable?
So my understanding is that the province is in the process of rolling out a new tracking system. I've received a number of emails lately for the new, I believe they call it the SMART tool. So I'm paying attention to that, and certainly my intention is to try and implement that. But I'm not clear on all the details at this point. So, but the staff are aware of it, and I think it's our intention to do so. Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Seidemann. That was a very good discussion. Okay, next up, who's going to take this report then? This is a report from the Manager of Transportation and Economic Development regarding the Northwest Regional Workforce Attraction Initiative. This was a late agenda item. You speak to that, Mr. Long? Okay. Actually, just hold on one moment.
Your Worship, I just brought my collection of research material to give to Mr. Seidemann. Sorry for being interrupted,
No, that's
but
okay.
I thought that he might. It's a collection of bylaws in there that other municipalities have done. It's outdated. It's 2007 to 2010, but there's a workbook in there, and some of that information would be. It's on grants that you can apply for and stuff, which are probably long gone. But I thought I might as well not just keep it in my filing cabinet. If it's of any use to this council, we should probably use it.
I know Mr. Seidemann will be reading it on his Friday nights, so it's all good. Okay, Mr. Long, the Northwest Regional Workforce Attraction Initiative.
Actually, I can speak to it.
My voice has gone up an octave.
Okay. Ms. Baumann.
So the recommendation is that Mayor and Council support the partnership of an application to be submitted by the Regional District of Kitimat-Stikine to the BC Rural Dividend Fund for the Northwest Regional Workforce Attraction Initiative, and that the City of Prince Rupert support this project through its duration. So essentially, the economic development representatives from the City of Prince Rupert, Terrace, Kitimat-Stikine, and the Bulkley Valley Economic Development Association and the District of Kitimat gathered in Smithers to discuss existing and potential regional economic development collaborations, opportunity to collaborate on a regional workforce resident attraction campaign was identified. So it's difficult to attract and keep and retain skilled workforces in the north, and each community, instead of fighting each other to try and say why they should be the one that people come to, they want to apply for a dividend so that they can all work together and promote the region as a group and identify what our unique differences are that might actually work for certain skilled labor attraction, and so instead of competing, they basically just want to work together, and we believe that the City of Prince Rupert would do well to partner with this and see it right through the end. It would be essentially a video that would be created that I understand is what the money is going to go towards, basically to just put out there into the world, and also have some features on all of our websites to make it easy for people to be able to locate similar aspects in each of the region's locations on when anybody's doing any of their searching for whether or not they're going to relocate into our area. So that is, as I understand, what the ask is for.
Okay, that sounds great, actually. So the recommendation that Mayor and Council support the partnership and that the City of Prince Rupert support this project through its duration. Moved by Councillor Thorkelson. Moved by Councillor Moreau, second by Councillor Kinney. Discussion?
When I read this, I mean, I don't care whether we do it or not, really. I really have no strong feelings one way or the other. But I just was wondering, who are we trying to attract through this program? So are we trying to attract doctors and professional people, and we plan to share them through the region? Or are we trying to attract trades or laborers? You can only attract people who have jobs. And so, to try to attract right now millwrights to this community or electricians to this community, you're not going to attract them if you're just going to say, okay, come and go on unemployment insurance. And it seems to me that we would be better off if we really want to develop a workforce here, is to talk to as we have been doing, to talk to those people who are coming into our communities that are going to have jobs, such as AltaGas and if one of the LNG companies comes to town, to start doing what to encourage them to train people from our community. And if they need to bring in people from outside our community, to do that only after they've attempted to do training from our communities. And that's why First Nations and the surrounding First Nations have got so many training benefit agreements, because they want to see that their people are trained. So I don't see trying to attract people to our community where we don't have work for them, number one, and number two, to try to attract people from outside our community when surrounding First Nations communities are trying to make sure that their members, the members of their communities, are able to access that work that is coming up. So anyway, so I'm just trying to wonder what is the point of this. That's all. And
Did you want to answer that?
but what's the point?
Okay, Councillor Moreau wants to quickly, and then Councillor Renthow.
I can just add a bit of context, just based on the small business walk program that just happened. This is a perfect example. Is one of the questions that was asked was, what's the number one thing that the city can do to support your business? And this is actually one thing that far and away came back as one of the most popular responses, was because each company or small business had its own different way of trying to attract different parts of labor pools that don't exist here in Prince Rupert. So either they couldn't find someone to train locally, or they were having trouble attracting people from out of town. And so, individual companies might fly someone up in advance before their interviews so they could get a tour of the community. Some companies would bring up the entire family of someone as they're trying to attract them here for a job that already exists that they can't fill locally. And so the number one thing that came back as a recommendation from that exercise was for the city to take a leadership role in developing a coordinated approach for how we can attract skilled labor to come to our community for jobs that already exist. So from my perspective, this meets something that small businesses across Prince Rupert are asking for, which is to have a coordinated approach for how we can, for lack of a better term, sell ourselves to people who might not otherwise think about coming to Northwest BC to live and work.
Councillor Renthow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a good approach, but on the same time, I think if we can add to the motion, if we can ask for more funding from the higher level of government to train our local people in our training facilities. So I think if we can add that one.
I'm not sure this is going to that. This is a totally separate fund or application. So,
yeah, I like to see our local people
yes,
training facilities to use to train our local people before we looking for other sites.
I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea, but it doesn't matter how you look at it. It says competing against each other in other regions. We're going to be competing against them anyway, one way or the other. You're talking about a group of people down the highway that are a close-knit group, and then we're sort of stuck out at the end of the highway, and we can promote our own town. This will help us promote it to a degree, but I don't think it's going to put us in a position where we're going to attract more people. If you're in a group of cities, and as long as we get equal representation on a video or something like that, so we can showcase what we've got, I don't want to see us joining something and being included in it as a great place to fish just down the highway or something like that. We have a lot of attractions in our own town, more so I think than some of the others. I like to think Rupert's the best part of the Highway 16, but I really think that we're still going to be competing against people. We're not eliminating that competition by joining this.
Councillor Nish.
I have really no issue with this at all. We can all say we'd like to see local people train for jobs, and there's truth to that. But there's also a lot of opportunities for jobs that people come from out of town already. But maybe trying to attract them to maybe move here and become part of our town is kind of where I think this is what this is kind of designed behind. It could be anybody. It could be a doctor, or it could be a carpenter, it could be anyone. There's there's lots of work out there for certain jobs. There's other jobs there's no work. I mean, we can have that argument all day long. I really think this is a great idea, and I think that we lost a lot of people when the mill shut down, and a lot of people moved, and we lost a lot of our skilled workforce, and we lost a lot of businesses, and people left. They took their skills with them, and we need to attract those people back. Those people make this town bigger, which make more employment in other ways. It's not just about attracting them; it's about attracting their family and growing the town all around them. So I'm in full support of this.
And I'll just say, I mean, I agree with what Councillor Renhau is saying. I mean, obviously we want local people to be trained. It's not necessarily the role of City Council, anyways, to do training programs and things like that, but getting some feedback on this microphone. This particular initiative is just a regional approach. Sorry, some feedback there. It sounds like a regional approach to everybody working together. Like one of the problems we have in Rupert right now, for example, like the container facility just handed out, I think it was like 150 plus applications, and all of a sudden all these small businesses in the town just lost a whole bunch of workforce, and now they're having nothing but a problem trying to fill those roles. As the port grows, local people are going to be moving into these higher paying jobs. Our service sector is going to lose some of those folks. So there's, it's about bringing people to the area. But, there are training programs going through the college, through UMBC. The province, I believe, just made some huge investments on First Nations training in the area. I know Lac Lams is working on lots of training and things like that. So I think there's a lot of good local training initiatives going on. For me, it doesn't seem like there's any sweat off our back by joining in with the region on a promotional video, basically. Right? That's kind of seems to be an okay strategy to have that be presented.
If there are particular trades that we need, or we need nurses, and we need doctors, and we need lawyers, and we need engineers, and we need that kind of thing. They're not showing up in our community. Then I think a regional community attraction plan is a good idea. But what I just think that we have to be very careful, because this document talks about fly in, fly out in a transient labor force. The way the provincial government and federal governments have decided long time ago that they were going, when they started building mega projects, is that you can't have the 500 carpenters in this town that are going to be needed, or tradesmen in this town that are going to live here, that are going to be needed to build any project. You couldn't do it in Elcan. That's why we're talking about camps, because these guys move all over the place. So we're talking about trying to stop flying in, fly out. You're not going to do that unless we're talking about doctor specialists who are flying in, flying out. I agree, it'd be nice to attract them. So what I don't want to see is a program that is going to be saying, come one, come all to northern BC, and all of a sudden have a whole bunch of people coming into town to expecting a job and be looking for us to provide housing, because we have enough of that. We've talked about that shadow population to attract more of people coming on spec, because how almost all of the construction companies are going to work is they're going to hire either off the board or they will have their own construction company. They won't be hiring from most of their people from the area. That's why they build camps, because they're bringing their workers in and they're flying them in and out. So I just want to make sure, A, that we're not undercutting the programs that are going on in the communities, because we're disconnected with the First Nations communities. If we need more people after everybody's going to go out and be a longshore person, then we need a bunch of people to work for minimum wage in town. If that's who we're trying to attract, or we're going to attract somebody who we can guarantee a job to. Those are two different things. People starting to come to town on spec. We can't provide fishing industry jobs on spec anymore. There aren't any. What jobs are we going to supply on spec? And that's what this looks to me at, is not providing a targeted labor force for targeted jobs. It's trying to bring people to your community on spec. Now, I don't have a problem saying that, we need more people who are interested in small businesses, to create new small businesses, to fill up the storefronts downtown, right? I don't have a problem with that. What I do have a problem is if we're just going to have general advertising to attract more unemployed to our community when we don't have jobs to provide for them.
The truth is, it doesn't actually specify what the campaign looks like. I'm wondering if they're still trying to figure out. My understanding, this does have to do with doctors and things like that as well, but there's no specifics on what the campaign would look like. Do you have?
I'm pretty sure that if someone was going to look at moving to this town, they weren't going to just quit their job in another town, say I'm moving to Prince Rupert, and not have a clue where they were going. I'm pretty sure that this is just about promoting our area, and if someone really wants a job, they're gonna see what's available for their work. If there's no available for their style of work, then obviously they're not going to come. I'm pretty sure they're not all going to jump on the Greyhound bus and head to Rupert and hope for a job. I mean, there's always a transient population, but I'm pretty sure if they're a skilled person and they have a current job, they're not going to just jump out of that position and come here. So I'm pretty sure that it's. I don't understand what the big discussion's about. I mean, to me, this is what we need. We need to be able to attract people to this town. We need to grow this town again like it used to be. We want to be where we were 15 years ago. We don't want to keep going on the same damn route down the same depressed town as it's been for the last 15 bloody years.
I just noticed something, that the City of Prince Rupert support this project through its duration. And then it says here that it is anticipated the entire project could cost between $100,000 and $500,000. These funds can largely be obtained through leveraging grant funding opportunities. What if we don't get the grant funding opportunities? Does that mean we're kicking the money in?
No.
No?
No. We're just working. We're just basically coming together as all the communities around the region to say we're just going to work together on an initiative to see if we can attract some more people to the area. I don't know if this is too big of an issue.
I was just looking at the financial part of it when they said for the duration, and then they said it could cost up to $500,000. And if we're there for the duration and we don't get the actual grant funding or that, then they're saying it hopefully would only cost us $5,000. But I'd hate to see us buy into this and then end up with a big bill. The concept of it myself is very good, but I think it's a great idea.
Ms. Palmer, did you have something to say?
Councillor Cunningham just pointed it out. It says that maximum would be $5,000 as a total cost for the entire project, at worst case scenario.
Right. Okay. So the motion's on the floor, I believe. Yeah. Correct? Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, moving forward. Item 7A. That's a support lever to support the CFES Northern Development Initiative Trust for the of a grant for up to $2,500 for the CFES Community Festival. Moved by Councillor Kinney, seconded by Councillor Cunningham. Discussion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, next up we have a report from City Planner regarding the proposal to convert the Neptune Motel to the Hilltop Lodge housing for seniors. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The proposed bylaws for the proposed development are attached are included in attachment number 1, and they received first reading on January 9, 2017, regular council meeting. The conditions council resolved at that time have been substantially met. The report presented on the council on the above mentioned date is also included with a full application and staff analysis in your report in attachment number 2. And just very briefly, The applicant is proposing to recondition the existing motel that we know as Neptune Motel to a hilltop housing for seniors specifically. The intent is to furnish the rooms, include kitchenettes, and for the lack of a better word, senior-proof some of the areas of the building, such as, for example, the bathrooms. While there is no question about the demand, there are a couple of concerns with this project. One is that it's located within the light industrial area, currently enjoying a fairly quiet location with, can you see my cursor up on the screen? Yeah. So the location between the two car dealerships, the auto parts store, and they're somewhat secured with a thicket of wood and some steep slopes from the properties that are located on Saskatoon Avenue. The other concern is the public transportation. The nearest public transportation bus stop is approximately 500 meters away, and the nearest store of any type is the local neighborhood store, which is another 500 meters from the intersection of Portage and Prince Rupert Boulevard. To gain clarity on some of these concerns, and indeed to see if there's anything else, Council asked for certain things. One was the applicant to conduct a public information meeting, which was held on April 5th. The attendance wasn't as numerous as the staff would have liked to, but we had some good conversations. A number of councillors were there. The notes to the meeting are attached in the attachment 3. One of the things that wasn't fleshed out in the notes is the question of public transportation, and essentially the applicant noted that public transportation is unrealistic. However, we're working on two things. One was with the local taxi company to have regular shuttles between the property and the downtown area, and indeed the other one was to purchase a vehicle that would be a shuttle as well as support their other work in the city of Prince Rupert. They'll be able to comment that at a public hearing. The applicant also promised to supply a draft Section 219 covenant. However, due to applicant's error in scheduling, draft Section 219 covenant was not completed. However, in attachment 4, there is a promissory letter to have it here prior to the public hearing. Internal referrals did not produce any comments that would prevent the proposed amendment. External referral to MOTI will not require further analysis, and they will sign off on the proposed bylaw in due time. In conclusion, Mr. Mayor, the applicant has been active in providing the necessary information, and the proposed amendment bylaw can proceed to public hearing, therefore supporting my recommendation.
Thank you. Yeah, I was at the public information session as well as many councillors here. I thought, to be frank, I thought it was actually quite well attended. I thought it was under-attended from seniors, though, was the issue, was having people who would actually be interested in actually living in a residence like this. So I just wanted to mention that because I thought it was actually quite well attended. I think, there was lots of questions at the information session around shuttles and things, and that seems like it could be remedied, having a regular 2 or 3 times a day downtown, drop you off, pick you up type of thing. The one thing I've been getting back from the public on this, the one big thing is, well, why don't they build it somewhere else? Like, why would they put it there? And I guess the answer to that is that's a building they own, and it happens to be in that location, so there's not much the proponent can do. They didn't want to have an empty building sit just rotting basically in this community like we've had others do. And so they felt, you know what, we could do something that's going to be of a community benefit at a cheap rent rate that's going to be affordable for seniors, which has everything included in it, Wi-Fi, cable, all that, fully furnished. So I just wanted to put that out there that unfortunately the proponent doesn't really have a choice in the matter of where the location of this is. And sounds like they're trying to do everything they can to accommodate the accessibility of it. So I just want to put that out there because that's probably the one thing for me I've been hearing is why there. Just happens to be where the Neptune is.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a senior, and I've been talking to a lot of the seniors, there's a few seniors that would like to have waterfront views and the whole, like out on Graham Avenue. Well, they just can't afford it. So these are the kind of things that we need right now, is the places that people can afford to go in. They don't want to move to Victoria. They don't want to go down to the island. They want to stay in Rupert. So I don't think anybody should be even arguing about this. Thank you.
Well, there's no argument. Just Councillor Niche and then Councillor Moreau.
I just look at it as a repurposing of an existing building. I think that if that was a bare piece of land and someone came forward with an application to build seniors housing on it, we probably would be more, it's an industrial area, not really liking the idea so much. But being that it's been basically a place for people to kind of live or stay in already for many years, and it's just a little bit of a change. I think we definitely need these things in town, and I think there's always clientele for every different level of housing. So to me, it seems like it would be a fit for a repurposing of a building. One thing that they will have to realize, obviously, is that there is a diesel truck shop next door, and they are in an industrial area. So if they don't like living in that area, then they would have to move somewhere else. And it's not about complaining that the diesel truck starts up at 7 a.m. and they don't like it. Well, it's an industrial area and it's a repurposing of a building. So that's about all I got to say.
Councillor Moreau and then Councillor Cunningham.
I actually just want to add to that point. First, in terms of the transit, I'm not necessarily too concerned because, from my understanding, this isn't a supported living facility. So I mean, some of these residents will have their own personal vehicles, and some of them will qualify for handy dart service, and some will probably be able-bodied enough to walk the 400 meters to the closest bus stop. So I'm not necessarily too concerned about the accessibility, but I am concerned a little bit about the land use and the potential for conflict. Not necessarily presently, where, I mean, yeah, you do have a part shop next door. That's not necessarily too much of a conflict. But in moving forward in this rezoning, do we really have any mechanisms at our disposal for future land use decisions where, if that diesel shop is ever sold, and, there's so many things you can do in the light industrial zoning that could potentially be a major land use conflict in the future. Is there anything at our disposal, any tool that we can use to avoid a conflict like that in the future?
Unfortunately, no. It's something that I discussed with the applicant on a number of occasions, and including having a frank discussion about it at the information meeting. The couple of owners of the properties essentially noted that as well. As Councillor Niche has noted, this is repurposing of an existing building, and some of these things we have to deal with in a smaller communities because, we don't have that comfort of determining the exactness of the location, say for this building here. So the applicant is quite aware of it, and so let's say, for example, that in a number of years, one of these car dealerships becomes a property that's banging out bumpers. They have a potential of losing their clientele. It's really at the peril of the owner, and they do understand that this is not going to be a revolving door, that next year they're going to decide that something else is going to be in there. Your business plan is depending on a certain amount of speculation. And so for us to freeze the properties around, not to intrude onto this property would not be proper because they're essentially intruding onto the land use that's existing there. Right. And so the question then becomes, why was a motel there? So, you know, and then we come back to a small community BC. You know, some things happen, and we are trying to do the best with what we have.
Further discussion, Councillor Thorkelson.
I just have a procedural question. If the covenant, Section 219 covenant, comes to the public hearing, and we can't discuss that covenant at the public hearing, can we?
That covenant has to be available for public hearing. We can discuss it at public hearing. We can discuss it in terms of the intent. The only intent in that covenant is that they are going to say that I believe it's 55 that the ability to be in this property, you have to be 55 years old or older. There's nothing else that covenant. If that covenant says anything else, then they haven't fulfilled their obligation, and we'll stop public hearing. Before we go to a public hearing, I have to have it literally before the public hearing to have it reviewed by our lawyer.
Right.
Well, that makes me feel better, because I was just concerned that somebody comes in here and gives it to us on the day, and it says for the next 10 years, or so long as Sherman Ford is next door, whichever one is next door, and there's not a bumper creation company that we will do X, right? And so that's why I'm wondering, that if we aren't to get new information after that, and if we can't discuss or question the proponent at that meeting, then I want to make sure that we're well within our procedural bylaw.
Yeah, my instructions to the applicant were, this is not going to be if-then. It's going to be just very simple, 55 or over, you can have a residence at this location. Anything other than that is going to stop the machinery in its place.
Councillor Cunningham?
I echo Councillor Neese's sentiments. We've got an old building here that's been sitting empty. It's just going to be another derelict building, and I take my hat off to Macro for doing what they're doing. They're providing a niche in the senior housing that we need. The existing bachelor and one bedrooms have waiting lists right now. I think this will be a good fill-in for that. The Metlakatla one next. Whatever happens there will be another step in the right direction. We need this, and it's a great idea. You know, the few obstacles that face it, I think, are overcomable. So I'm not too worried about it. I think it's a great opportunity for the town.
Councillor Goodman?
Well, I'm glad that Macro is going to do some renovating. I just do want to remind you that Macro evicted all of those people that were living in that building, and so that building had tenants in it. Now, if they're evicting, they evicted them. If they're going to be fixing it up, so it's an actual renovation. They're fixing it up into something better, and now they can invite people back in, because most of those people that were living there were probably certainly over 50. And but I just want to point out that this is nice of them to do, but it was already occupied by people who didn't have a whole lot of money before.
Okay. Propose to move the recommendation. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, second by Councillor Kinney. Further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you very much. Reports from Council? Councillor Moreau?
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. I distributed a notice of motion for next meeting. Everyone should have it there on their desk. In essence, I wanted to be proactive, where we are having quite a few in-camera meetings before public meetings, and I mean, people rightfully have questions about that. The best way for me to describe to the public what an in-camera meeting is really if it's dealing with land, legal, or labor. And the City of Prince Rupert, I have a newfound appreciation over the last couple of years in how unique our circumstances in terms of first, the legal issues with Watson Island, and second of all, negotiating with major project proponents, specifically with liquefied natural gas. So I wanted to be proactive in putting forward a motion that basically takes the recommendations from the ombudsperson on best practices for closed meetings and communications. So there's 10 bullet points, and I'll spare you guys reading all of them tonight, but there's basically 10 bullet points, 10 recommendations from the ombudsperson, 6 of which we're already doing. The other 4 are basically building on, doing a little bit more than kind of the legislative minimum. So I think it's in our best interest, but also the public's, that we're proactive in this. So I'm looking forward to discussing that next meeting.
Okay. Mr. Mandrick, we'll put that on the next council meeting. Thank you.
Where can we find this ombudsman's report?
I can send you the web link if you want. Yeah.
Other reports from council?
I have a couple of questions. Now that we're getting 2nd Avenue repaved all the way down to the port and that, what is happening with the bypass road? Because I'd hate to see all this new paving go down and within a year or 2 it's back to where it was.
We have an application for the Wantage Road bypass, is what he's referring to. The Wantage Road bypass has actually been integrated into the PRACA now, the Prince Rupert Area Corridor Analysis Project, which is the larger provincial project that we have a working group on that will to connect Lac Oulam, Smellicala, the airport by a road network, as coming up with 4 different kind of phases of how that can look. That's the Wantage Road has now been integrated into that. The ultimate issue when it comes to Wantage Road, there's a variety of options of how to get truck traffic diverted from downtown, is about highway responsibility. So, for example, if there was a Wantage Road bypass, does that become a highway, or does that become Highway 16? Some of the discussions we're having with the province right now. So in the immediate, the road, obviously, as you hear from everybody, needs work. So, and all the manholes need to be leveled off. So it was decided that we would work with the province to get that immediately sorted out so that we at least have a new asset. And in the future, if the Wantage Road bypass works out in terms of the PRACA, the overall PRACA project, which is still probably a couple of years from any sort of major action because it is a much larger project, that it could be potentially sometime down the future that Wantage Road bypass could be Highway 16, and that city could potentially acquire 2nd Avenue as its own and have a different logistics setup. So those are some of the discussions happening right now. Nothing set in stone. But in the immediate, it's still probably 2, 3, 5 years away from something like that. The Wantage Road bypass was, I believe, brought up originally in the early 2000s by Jim Rushton, who used to be the economic developer officer here. So it's certainly not a new idea, but our approach now is to try to keep it under a bigger project or bigger, so it doesn't get lost in translation. So the province has recently said, okay, we'll put Wantage Road into the PRACA. So after this election, we'll see how that continues on. So that's kind of where that's at.
My concern is we're doubling the capacity of the port, so we're probably going to be doubling the capacity of the trucks traveling through the city. And it's always been a bit of a safety concern. It's going to become more of a safety concern, and I think it's something we should be pushing as hard as we can before something happens and somebody gets hurt. Now, one other thing is the Community Achievement Awards. We discussed it before, but there was some talk by the Special Events Committee of giving them out on Canada Day because it's 150th birthday.
Well, we did that last year, actually. We started the new tradition last year.
So we're getting into crunch time.
Yeah, have we released those, Mr. Mandrick? The app, we should probably get that out before Canada Day.
And last meeting I brought up 2 issues. One was a handicap parking place down at Rustbrook, and I'd like to know what, if anything, we've done with that. And the second one was the unsightly premises and buildings around town. And our city administrator provided me with an actual bylaw that does have some teeth in it. And I'd like to see us start to use those teeth a little bit.
as far as the handicap parking space down at Rushbrook, when the line painting occurs in the summertime, then it will be probably put in. We're not going to bring in, yeah, exactly. So it has been communicated, and the Director of Operations is aware of it.
Councillor King?
Question for you, Bob. When is the cleanup going to be, where people can put the stuff beside the curb?
Yeah, actually, I have a report coming to council. That's our Director of Operations indicates that it's extremely expensive to try and pull this off. But I'll have a report come forward and suggest that. We're also working on some kind of a process to get rid of the derelict vehicles, and we'll have a report on that too.
Good. Thank you.
Councillor or Ms. Bauman?
It might be a good time to actually mention that in everyone's phone books there is a tipping token that you can cut out, and between May 1st and I believe the middle of June you can use that tipping token. It allows you to have free tipping up to a certain weight. So it's been utilized in the past. However, it's probably one of those things that people forget actually is in the phone book, since so many people use the internet now to look phone numbers up. So since it's been brought up by Councillor Kinney, I will just mention it to the public that tipping token actually is in the phone book and is available.
Great, thank you.
Your Worship, many people don't get phone books anymore because many people are using cell phones instead of landlines, and so it's only those, I believe, who subscribe to City West that get a phone book now.
I was going to say, what's a phone book?
Yeah, probably. And so I was wondering if they can come to City Hall and get one, or how do we look after the distribution? Are only City West subscribers going to get a tipping token?
Well, this is certainly something that we actually haven't thought of, so we will have to address how that's going to work out. But you are correct in mentioning that people don't necessarily all have landlines now, so thank you.
Okay, Councillor Niche.
Just one quick thing back to what Councillor Cunningham was talking about with the bypass road. I do believe there is some road being set up too, also from Ridley Island to the port within the next year and a half or something too. So I think, that's not going to alleviate everything, but it will alleviate some of it. Obviously you're going to have companies like, say, Quick Load, for example, which is going to go from the port directly through town. But I was having this discussion with someone the other day about it, and realistically, it is Highway 16, and if you take Terrace as an example, there's truck traffic isn't diverted around Terrace through a bypass road; it goes through Terrace, just like it does on any other town along Highway 16. So, as much as we don't want to see an accident happen in the middle of our town, it is a highway, and just because we're at the end of the road, we aren't any different than anywhere else. Just to quickly add to there's another benefit from having a wanted road bypass. It's not just about trucks; it's actually creating access to the land behind that area there, right? That you could have other developable areas to occur, right, to the base of the mountain and beyond. So we've come up with a variety of reasons why it would be necessary than just diverting truck traffic. But Councillor Niche is correct that the port's also working on another project. So the goal is to just get the trucks from heading downtown, and there's a new station or a new warehouse that they're building that's going to lessen the amount of containers that will be coming downtown, and then hopefully eventually we will get some sort of bypass. But there's certainly no harm in getting downtown paved and 3rd Avenue paved along with that. So,
not to be picky, but the highway going through Terrace doesn't go down through their downtown core like it does in our city, with people backing forth across the road as much as they do between the mall and the downtown Tim Hortons and all that. But we have a lot more pedestrian traffic. On most of this, even Smithers, the highway doesn't go through their downtown area. It bypasses it and that. And I am concerned because we have pedestrians that don't look when they cross the road. They just walk out. And it's just a safety concern that...
That's definitely where I think we're all on the same page in that. it just doesn't happen overnight to have these things solved, right? That's all. So we're definitely working on that for sure. Okay, any other reports? Not all. Motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, second by Councillor Niche. All those in favor? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you for coming.